Today we're going to be talking about illustration rares that are going up in price, but we're going to be talking about some of the more sort of distinct and cards that aren't really that covered. There are plenty of illustration rares that people consistently are sort of mentioning, such as the Magikarp, Eevee, Squirtle, Ghastly, Persian, a lot of the Paldea evolved cards. Drowsy for sure has got its fair share of coverage, and a bunch of other cards that we're sort of seeing on this page. But a lot of the ones that are on the second page and even third page that have had immense growth are not really being covered. So I thought today we'd talk about them and see the sort of movement that's happening. So without further ado, let's get into it. Starting off with number 10, we have Tatsugiri. This not in any particular order as far as I recall. I just sort of found some really interesting cards, and I was like looking at them, I was like, wow, these have grown a lot. So I kind of wanted to sort of share them with y'all. So if we see this Tatsugiri card, particularly from Twilight Masquerade, so this set obviously has the Eevee, which is very loved, and perhaps one of the best illustration rares of the entire Scarlet and Violet era. And this is the second most expensive illustration rare from Twilight Masquerade. Tatsugiri is a Scarlet and Violet unique Pokemon, so it was introduced through the Paldea region, Generation 9. This is the Sushi Pokemon. It shows up in the Scarlet and Violet games as one of the Titan Pokemon, which is really funny because the Titan Pokemon are usually jumbo-sized versions of the regular Pokemon that appear, like Bombardier and Cloth and stuff like that. And then you fight this huge Dondozo, and then this tiny Tatsugiri shows up, and it turns out it's the Titan Pokemon alongside the Dondozo, which is completely weird. So that's pretty much the extent to Tatsugiri being covered. I mean, in the anime, it shows up as a sort of mischief maker. So let's expand this graph out to 6 months, and we see that this card has steadily been growing, but it was honestly more expensive than a lot of illustration rares. Like, it wasn't one of those that were going for $2 or so. And it's grown substantially, going up a little bit, up to $10 in December. Had a bit of a spike when there were 186 items sold, which is quite a lot. And the discrepancy between the lowest and highest sales is quite substantial, so there is that to know. There was a bit of a 2-month period here where the card was sort of stagnant to some extent. And then it really started to blast off. If we take a look at recent sales, we see that as the market price is $31. There are some weird sales to be sure. So if we take a look right here, we have a $59.90 sale, we have a $49.90 sale, $59.90 sale, $49.90 sale. Completely ludicrous. There's definitely no justification for those sales. We see one listing for $100. So I think that's pretty much saying all that needs to be said for this card. It's a decent artwork, but definitely overpriced and overvalued. I definitely steer clear of this for now. Next up, we have the Slowpoke. This is a card that I was mentioning for a decent period of time. A lot of people actually appreciate it, I'd say. Although it's more of a niche sort of art style and it's not very colorful or vibrant or explosive, there is a simplicity that is quite admirable, and the Slowpoke is very small in the card, right? It's not the main piece of attraction. Yet, it's sort of nice to see how it's kind of slowly creeping out of the opening cafe door, and its tail's poking out a little bit. The only two really bright colors are this neon sign and the Slowpoke. I guess you could include these two signs. So yeah, it's pretty simple, but it's really nice for that reason as well. If we expand it to a year, this is obviously Scarlet and Violet base, so it's had a long time to mature and so forth. And this card was going for consistently $8, $9 for a long time, months and months, up till November. Then the card started to grow, I'd say more linearly, pretty high though, to $22. And then it had this huge jump, $39.16. At which point it had grown 381%. After that, it's been dropped, and then it's kind of been dropping now, going to $32. So you know what? This card is definitely, it was subject to some crazy buyouts for sure. 44, 95, 42, and this card's sort of cooling down now a little bit. I'm really glad to see that, because when the card sort of levels out, I think it'll be a better choice for people, especially as it is still a unique artwork. Getting down to 20 is reasonable for this card. Next up is Curlian. You know what? There's actually something really interesting about this card that I didn't even know until quite recently. But this Curlia card, alongside the entire art line from Scarlet and Violet base, I'll put it up on screen, the Ralts, the Curlia, and the Gardevoir. The same artist also drew the Leafeon from Crown Zenith and the Leafeon from Prismatic Evolution. Following a similar art style, I think this artist also drew the Altaria and Swablu. And so, you know what? All these artworks are pretty solid. I definitely am liking this artist's work. If we take a look over the past year, I mean, I think this card was pretty low compared to the other two. Gardevoir being the most expensive card from Scarlet and Violet base, and the Ralts was the most expensive illustration rare. This card was going for, under $10 for a decent period of time, even before the year graph. can extend. So you know what, this card was bound to grow at some point. I don't think it should have grown to this extent, but at the same time, you know, it's one of the more justifiable growths due to the fact that the sort of complementary cards have grown so much. Take a look at recent sales. We are seeing the card is dipping down a little bit in the most recent sales, 26 and 28, 39. That's, I mean, if the market price is 33, I'm not going to like raise alarm bells for that, right? 28, you know, 28, 30, 30. So it seems to be sort of going a little bit under market value right now. So potentially gonna experience a recorrect soon. Next we have the Merrill, and this card I was pretty harsh on in the past. It doesn't really deserve to be this expensive, and I was honestly not a big fan, although I have mentioned this in the past a ton, that I'm a huge fan of water Pokemon cards. Like whenever they're underwater in the sea, even like the sort of half in the sea, half out of water sort of aesthetic, really nice. We have a lot of Pokemon here, like Clauncher, a bunch of Love Discs, Pinkerton. We even have a Toxapex over here poking in from the corner, and a Bruxish over there in the back as well. So a lot of Pokemon, I do always love that to the cards, but I think it's a little bit overpriced for the fact that it was good for $9, right? And it has jumped stunningly to $33, dropped down a little bit to 30, and has gone up to 37. Taking a look at recent sales, we see some we can see a $44 sale, some 33s over here, 27 for LP, and then going back a little bit because there are a bunch of sales in different languages, right? 33, 39. So it seems to be actually going up a little bit, this card. So it doesn't seem to be showing signs of recorrect yet. Next we have the Frigibacks, and this card is part of another storyline in Scarlet Violet, and Palais Evolve seemed to really lean into this a lot, which was the second set of the entire Scarlet Violet era, and I hope that they actually lean into this a little bit more in the coming sets, you know, especially for mega cards. Oh my gosh, I would love to see a Riolu Lucario, like a Riolu art rare, Lucario art rare, and then Lucario mega SIR. That would be sensational, and I think they really have a great chance to do a sort of storylines or connected artworks, you know, for those cards, right? But anyway, getting off that little tangent, this card is one that's been sort of recorrecting. It was going for about $8, it dropped down to $5, and then slowly grew up to $9 in February, and then just instantaneous, like this is complete buy, right? It went to $28 and has now dropped back down to 19. It had experienced 229% growth in this like tiny time frame, right? There's barely any change in this value, so we can basically say it's an instantaneous jump to that value. And now it's come back down, so now it's only 126% growth. If we take a look at recent sales, we see it's still having some sales that are going below the market value, you know, 16 right here, a couple more 16s. Definitely a card that's going to keep dropping. And this is kind of a trend, honestly, because the Baxcalibur is also feeling that recorrect happening for it as well. Next, we have Litten, and I actually really like this card. This is a fun one that's really, I'd say, laid back and chill. You know, we have a lot happening in it. We have a Litten here. I don't know. I think this might be an actual Litten. I'm not sure. And then there's another Litten over here. We have Incineroar plush here, a Meowth plush, a bunch of Wishy-Washies. We even have a shiny Litten, which is really cool, on the book. A couple of berries like Oran Berry, Lepa Berry, a bunch of Litten and Meowth sort of on other books. It's really packed with stuff. Sort of look at. I really like it when there's a lot of busy, but at the same time not sort of like messy busy, right? Like in the Greninja where there's just a bunch of colors like splash around. I like it when there's a lot happening in the card, so you can analyze it, take a look at it, appreciate it. There's also the two Meowstic happening over here. I just noticed that as well. So, you know, it's kind of nice to sort of uncover new things about cards the more you look at it. I actually have this card in Japanese. I think it's been going up as well to some extent. I mean, that's just common whenever the English goes up. Japanese tends to go up, albeit more increment, a little less sort of substantially, which is actually to my preference because I rather not have cards that blast up and then sort of everything drop all of a sudden in a substantial way. But anyway, this card has actually had a more realistic growth, I would say, at least compared to the others. There aren't those humongous vertical jumps. It's been more of an exponential curve, and it's going for 168. Looking at recent sales, it seems that it's pretty much going for this value. It's not really, I mean, with the exception of this sale, you know, it seems to be sort of growing more gradually to this $20 price. This is going to be the fourth card on our list here, and I really do love this card. One of my favorites from Temporal Forces. I have mentioned this in the past. I really like the sort of geometric style that this card takes. the way that Arbok sort of slithering, curling around this wooden plank, similar to how a lot of the sort of structures in this card are moving, right? We have a lot of the leaves sort of curling around the wood in a similar sense. And then two cannons sort of just chilling here, completely unaware that it's in the sort of sight of this Arbok. And this one was unfortunately subject to the sort of huge jump, but it's actually leveled out more. So was going back down to 18.99 and then came back up to 20. This card is going for about $18, I'd say. If we take a look at recent sales, with a few going for above market value, but most going below or for about 18-ish. So it's pretty much just averaging 20 due to some that are much higher and some that are much lower. So you know what, there's a chance this card isn't really going to drop too much, at least as of now, as of the indication of the cards. I think this one being 20 is reasonable. I don't think it should go up too much more. Especially with some hype happening with the Journey Together, and a lot of illustration artists are going to definitely blow up in that set for sure. For number 3, we have Hisuian, Growlithe, and this is the Twilight Masquerade connected artwork. Again, as you see, there are a lot happening here. This one is connected to the pair and SIR. I think one of the best SIR trainers for sure. Special illustration art trainers in the entire generation. There's something about the green, I don't know, it's really, really vibrant and makes the card pop a lot. I have a trainer binder, and when I scan through it, the first thing that sort of grabs your attention is that parent card. There's Miriam, I own all of these other trainer SIRs, but that one really grabs your attention. If we take a look at this card, it was going for about $11, jumped up to $25, and has dropped a little bit to $21. Recent sales are going a little bit under market for a few of them. A couple sort of still trying to maintain. I'd say this card is showing signs of dropping. Final 2, we have Deerling, and I'm just going to show the price real quick with this because I'm going to show its connected art and we're going to look at them together. So this card has grown 203% over the year, $23.35. Moving on to the Sawsbuck, and I think this one's going to surprise a lot of people. 2,191%. My goodness, what a crazy, crazy growth story for this. And I happen to think that this is a really nice sort of connected art, mainly because it really leans into a particular scene in the show where there are a collection of Sawsbuck that are sort of mythologized by this photographer's grandfather. And so he sort of saw all of these Sawsbuck gathered around a lake, and they were all of the different seasons. Technically, Sawsbuck in each season changed their sort of horns and antlers and sort of look. As you can see with the Sawsbuck, it's in its autumn form, whereas this Deerling seems to be in its spring form. And in that scene, each one is in a different season in the exact same place, which is completely inexplicable. So I really love that. Do I think this card should have jumped like this? Obviously not, but you know, we are where we are right now. And so this card, I'd say, is definitely one of the better connected artworks for sure. I really, really like this, and together they form a really stunning artwork. I'd say, honestly, rather than putting 37 right now when it's definitely subject to some volatility, because a lot of the illustration artists are sort of getting this sort of recorrect happening. We're already seeing some sales dipping below, couple going above, but mostly, you know, 34, 35, 33. Honestly, safer just get the Japanese because it looks great. Those are still reasonable to some extent, and you can definitely get the Deerling for less than Sawsbuck. So together, probably less than what you would pay for a single Sawsbuck in English. Alright, that's going to conclude today's video. I hope you all enjoyed it. I really had fun sort of looking through some of these more obsolete or less discussed illustration rares. Let me know in the comments what you'd like to see next. If you want to check out my video on the best illustration rares under $50, check this video out. I'll catch you all in the next one.